This is the guitar tablature book for Coldplay's debut album Parachutes, which I bought over 20 years ago. The main question I want to answer with this video is, do we even need tab books in our day and age? Has the limitless resource, that is the modern day internet, not made them completely obsolete? Come join me for today's review to find out. Guitar tablature books is sort of in a weird spot in terms of the tutorial market, at least from my perspective. I mean, just look at YouTube alone. There's countless people who can provide the same or even a better service than a tab book can. And say what you will about the internet, this is arguably one of the better things it has produced. Regular people being able to provide a public service that once only a select few were able to create and publish. So what then is the allure of tab books? Personally, I haven't purchased one since the mid-late 2000s, the last one being Viva La Vida. And boy, do I have things to say about the quality of that one. However, back when I first started learning how to play the guitar, around the year 2000, tablature books were pretty much still the gold standard when it came to authentic guitar tutorials. Because back in the day, the only other two options were either try to figure it out yourself by ear, or actually try your luck on the early 2000s internet. But all you would typically find way back then were most often just digital lyric sheets with rudimentary chord shapes on top. And nothing against those, they also have their place in the guitar world, but they obviously just wouldn't cut it if you wanted the real thing, and not just a loose accompaniment. That being said, obviously, tab books are also prone to errors and inaccuracies. After all, they're not written by the artists themselves, but rather music arrangers hired by the publishing house. For them, it's just a job. And here we come full circle again. Why then would we need these flawed relics of the past, if a myriad of people can provide the same on the internet for free nowadays? Well, this is the exact reason why I've chosen this particular tab book for today's review. Because it's actually so good that it makes a very strong case for the guitar tab book as a justified medium in the guitar tutorial world. So without any further ado, let's check out what this book has to offer. This to me is the mother of Coldplay tab books. On some tab books you will occasionally see this label saying, "Play it as it is." And while it's not on this cover, the Parachutes tab book truly deserves it. For like 95% of it, that is. Biggest of shout outs to Matt Coe, I hope I'm pronouncing this name right, I'm sorry, who appears to be the sole arranger of the tabs. He gets virtually everything right, and his level of accuracy cannot be overstated. Going back to what I said before, this book was published 20 years ago. Nowadays, we have it so much easier. We have such a vast resource of visual material in the form of live performances posted to YouTube, which make it so much easier to verify chord shapes, capo positioning, and by proxy, the guitar tunings themselves. All of which Matt didn't have access to. So, Mr. Coe, kudos to you, man. What an impressive feat. This tab book is, for the most part, so accurate that I've always had this secret conspiracy theory with myself, saying that Matt Coe is just a pseudonym, and the book was actually ghostwritten by the band themselves. Jury's still out on that, if you ask me. Let's now look at the contents themselves to see why this is actually so good. So if you're at least a little familiar with the guitar style of Coldplay, and especially Chris Martin's way of playing the acoustic guitar, you'll probably know that the thing you really want to be looking out for in a Coldplay tab book are the tunings, since Chris typically doesn't play in standard tuning. And in that regard alone, once again, the arranger gets literally every tuning right, and not just for the acoustic guitars, but for all the guitars in general. Here's an overview I made of all the guitars plus tunings. feel free to verify for yourself. Second big pro of this tab book is, it doesn't just get all the tunings right, but literally all the guitars on every track are accounted for, which means any track you can hear on the original tracks will have a guitar tablature, even if it's just one tiny little part. This is why I've decided to showcase Shiver for you. There's quite a few guitars in there that I'd never even noticed before, but Matt Coe goes out of his way to show all the layers of the arrangement. This tab book is essentially one big love letter to the Parachutes album. It really makes you appreciate how crystal clean, concise, and tight these arrangements are. So much so that every instrument track has its place and purpose, which stands in contrast to Coldplay's bigger sound of later works, where a lot of the time we encounter more of a wall of sound kind of aesthetic. And I'm not saying that either production style is better than the other. They both serve their purpose depending on the music style and genre, but this tab book really highlights the beautiful and clear acoustic and electric guitar arrangements, which was so typical of that post-Britpop era. And final pro of this tab book, even though it's somewhat self-evident, 95% of the time the actual chords and melodies indicated in the book are obviously correct. I'm just mentioning this since, well, of course you can have all the correct tunings and all guitars accounted for, but still have bad tabs by getting the actual chords and melodies wrong, which this book doesn't do for the most part. And for last, speaking of for the most part, let's briefly turn to the downsides of the Parachutes tab book, of which, frankly, there aren't that many, so I should rather call them nitpicks. Well, the one thing that gives away that this probably wasn't ghost-written by the band after all is the fact that there are a few inaccuracies and incorrect transcriptions after all. These are far and few between though, and are more than made up by how crazy good some of these calls by the arranger are. Let's turn to the tab for Shiver to see what I mean. So, in the Did You Want Me to Change part, Coe transcribes the chords as this. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. What I believe though is that this is actually a misprint in the book. For the chords are named properly, but the positioning for middle and index finger are either a few frets too high or low. This also sticks out, since most of the other chords are extremely accurate. And once again, this cannot be overstated. Because when you actually focus on the mix of Shiver, you'll notice a lot of the times that the level of the acoustic guitar is pretty low. In the louder sections of songs like Shiver, Spies, Yellow, you can barely even hear the acoustic guitar. So yeah, absolutely astonishing once again how accurate the tabs are for the most part. Another downside is that occasionally there are some embellishments to chords and melodies that are simply not there in the recording. Take Yellow's short little breakdown after the chorus, for example. Coe tabs it like this. For you I bleed myself dry. It sounds nice for sure, but as much as I try, I simply cannot hear that chord change on the recording, and I've never seen Chris play it like that either. And there are a few other unnecessary embellishments here and there on Trouble, for example. It's also interesting that the positions of High Speed and We Never Change are flipped in the book, with We Never Change being track 8 and High Speed track 9. Obviously a misprint, which I kind of take as a reinforcement for my argument that as accurate as the tab book is, there are simply a few weird misprints here and there. Too bad. This is the best tab book I've personally ever encountered. 10 out of 10 for me. A love letter to parachutes. If you love this album and play the guitar, this might be a pretty good purchase. You'll have a lot of fun with this. Anyways, thanks for watching everyone. Let me know in the comments below. What is your opinion on tab books? Have you had good or bad experiences with them? Do you maybe have a personal favorite tab book because it's so accurate and full of detail? I would love to start a little discussion in the comments below, so don't be shy. And if this is your first time watching, why don't you consider hitting that subscribe button? Lots more content coming your way about Coldplay guitars, tunings, music and media in general. Joe Zealand, out.
Yeah, that's